In 359 BC, Philip II became the king of Macedonia. Philip spent the first year of his rule fighting off invaders who wanted to take over his kingdom. Once he defeated the invaders, he was ready to launch invasions of his own. Philip's main target was Greece. The leaders of Athens, knowing they were the target of Philip's powerful army, called for all Greeks to join together. However, few people responded, and as a result, the armies of the Athens and its chief ally Thebes were easily defeated by the Macedonians. Having witnessed this defeat, the rest of the Greeks agreed to make Philip their leader. Now, Philip defeated the Greeks because he was a brilliant military leader. He borrowed and improved many of the strategies Greeks' armies used in battle. For example, Philip's soldiers, like the Greeks, fought as a phalanx. A phalanx was a group of warriors who stood close together in a square. Each soldier held a spear pointed outward to fight off enemies. As soldiers in the front lines were killed, others stepped up from behind to fill their spots. Philip improved upon the Greeks' idea. He gave his soldiers spears that were much longer than those of his opponents. This allowed his army to attack first in any battle. Philip also sent cavalry and archers into battle to support the phalanx. After conquering Greece, Philip turned his attention to Persia. He planned to march east and conquer the Persian army, but he never made it. He was murdered in 336 BC while celebrating his daughter's wedding when Philip died. His throne and his plans passed to his son, Alexander. When Philip died, the people in the Greek city of Thebes rebelled. They thought that the Macedonians would not have a leader strong enough to keep the kingdom together. And they were wrong. Although he was only 20 years old, Philip's son Alexander was a strong leader, as his father had been. He immediately went south to end the revolt in Thebes. Within a year, Alexander had destroyed Thebes and enslaved the Theban people. He used Thebes as an example to other Greeks of what would happen if they turned against him. Then, confident that the Greeks would not rebel again, he set out to build an empire. Alexander's efforts to build an empire made him one of the greatest conquerors in history. These efforts earned him the name Alexander the Great. Building an empire like his father, Alexander was a brilliant commander. In 334 BC, he attacked the Persians, whose army was much larger than his own, but Alexander's troops were well trained and ready for battle. They defeated the Persians time after time. According to legend, Alexander visited a town called Glurum in Asia Minor while he was fighting the Persians. There he heard of an ancient tale about a knot tied by an ancient king. The tale said that whoever untied the knot would rule all of Asia. According to the legend, Alexander pulled out his sword and cut right through the knot. Taking this as a good sign, he and his army set out again. If you look at the map, you can follow the route Alexander took on his conquest. After defeating the Persians near the town of Issus, Alexander went to Egypt, which was part of the Persian Empire. The Persian governor had heard of his skill in battle. He surrendered without a fight in 332 BC and crowned Alexander pharaoh. After a short stay in Egypt, Alexander set out again near the town of Guadalcanal. He defeated the Persian army for the last time. After the battle, the Persian king fled. The king soon died, killed by one of his own nobles. With the king's death, Alexander became the ruler of what had been the Persian Empire. Still intent on building his army, Alexander led his army through Central Asia. In 327 BC, Alexander crossed the Indus River and wanted to push deeper into India, but his exhausted soldiers refused to go any further. Disappointed, Alexander began the long march home. Alexander left India in 325 BC, but he never made it back to Greece. In 323 BC, on his way back, Alexander visited the city of Babylon and got sick. He died a few days later at the age of 33. After he died, Alexander's body was taken to Egypt and buried in a golden coffin. Alexander's empire was the largest the world had ever seen. An admirer of Greek culture, he worked to spread Greek influence throughout his empire by founding cities in the lands he conquered. Alexander modeled his cities after the cities of Greece. He named many of them Alexandria after himself. He built temples and theaters like those in Greece. He then encouraged Greek settlers to move to new cities. These settlers spoke Greek, which became common throughout the empire. In time, Greek art, literature, and science spread into surrounding lands. Even as he supported the spread of Greek culture, however, Alexander encouraged conquered people to keep their own customs and traditions. As a result, a new blend of culture developed in Alexander's empire. It combined elements of the Persian, Egyptian, Syrian, and other cultures with Greek ideas. Because this new culture was not completely Greek or Hellenic, historians call it Hellenistic or Greek-like. It wasn't purely Greek, but it wasn't heavily influenced by Greek ideas. When Alexander died, he didn't have an obvious heir to take over his kingdom, and no one knew who was in power. With no clear direction, Alexander's generals fought for power. In the end, three powerful generals divided the empire among themselves. One became king of Macedonia and Greece, one ruled Syria, and the third claimed Egypt. As you might expect, the kingdom of Macedonia and Greece was the most Greek of the three. However, it is also the weakest government. The Macedonian kings had to put down the many revolts by the Greeks. Damaged by the revolts, Macedonia couldn't defend itself. Armies from Rome, a rising power from Italy Peninsula, marched in and conquered Macedonia in the mid 100s BC. Like the kings of Macedonia, the rulers of Syria faced many challenges. Their kingdom, which included most of their former Persian empire, was home to many different peoples from many different customs. Unhappy with Hellenistic rule, many of these people rebelled against their leaders. Weakened by years of fighting, the kingdom slowly broke apart. Finally, in the 60s BC, the Romans marched in and took over Syria. The rulers of Egypt encouraged the growth of Greek culture. They built the ancient world's largest library in the city of Alexandria. Also in Alexandria, they built the museum, a place for scholars and artists to meet. Through their efforts, Alexandria became the great center of culture and learning. In the end, the Egyptian kingdom lasted longer than the other Hellenistic kingdoms. However, in 30 BC, it too was conquered by Rome.